Good afternoon, and thank you all very much for coming. As you've heard me say many times, at Louisville Metro government, we're working every day to make Louisville a safer, stronger, and healthier city. And a big part of that is the ongoing work to reform and improve Lmpd, to strengthen the level of trust with the community that we all serve, and to provide our officers with the guidance, clarity, and leadership they need to do their jobs right. That's especially important now as we announce some necessary updates we're making to some very important policies, practices, and procedures. These are approaches that address how police officers respond to some of the most difficult and dangerous situations that come up in public safety. Specifically, when a member of the public is demonstrably a clear and immediate threat to the safety of other people, and the officer in turn responds with deadly force to protect themselves or others. The official term, of course, is officer-involved shooting. I wish these never happened. Every Lmpd officer, like every one of us here, wishes they never happened. But sometimes, tragically, they do happen. And it is a tragedy, always, and for everyone involved and the people around them. And every time these incidents happen, there also has to be an investigative process that both officers and the public believe in. A known, clear, and consistent process that provides transparency, accountability, and efficiency. The chief and I inherited unwritten and inconsistently applied policies regarding officer-involved shootings that, like many other policies and practices at Lmpd, needed to be strengthened to meet a higher standard of excellence and best practices. And that's what we've been working on with a wide range of policies since both of our first days on the job. From looking at recruiting, to revising how we train our recruits, expanding innovations like the deflection program that incorporates social services into our responses to some 911 calls, and making major reforms and historic investments to improve the handling and processing of open records requests. And the updates we're announcing today are part of the ongoing work to ensure openness and accountability. They reflect the values that the chief and I share, like the need to provide clarity for officers and greater transparency for the public. And they are only possible thanks to the chief's new leadership. So now, to get into the details of this new policy, I'll turn things over to Chief Jackie Gwynn Biller-Oel to share the details. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you for helping us inform the public on Lmpd's new officer-involved shooting process. Today, we are announcing changes to the Lmpd's process that will provide greater transparency to the public. These changes will not only improve efficiency of the investigation, but also they will ensure that there are third-party reviews and safeguards built into the process. Our goals are to provide the public with a clear understanding of this new process, provide a process that is consistent, and make as much information public as possible while protecting the integrity of the case. This includes timely release of body-worn footage within 10 business days. As you are all aware, the city government has a new administration, and the Lmpd has a new administration, such as myself, and we inherit certain practices in handling of officer-involved shootings. But with new leadership, changes often occur within organizations as we assess how to best provide thorough investigations and timely information to the public. We appreciate you. We are careful and we are considerate in everything that we do as within Lmpd. Mayor Greenberg and Lmpd's executive command staff and I agree that moving forward, Lmpd will take the lead in investigating officer-involved shootings. Again, The move will provide timely release of video within 10 business days, which cannot be guaranteed unless Lmpd is in the lead role. The Lmpd Public Integrity Unit will take the lead in the investigations. A copy of the case file will be turned over to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for determination of final disposition. A copy will also be provided to the Kentucky State Police for a thorough investigative review. And a copy will also be provided to the Louisville Office of Inspector General in compliance with our existing Memorandum of Understanding. Lastly, I will personally supervise these investigations. To provide more information on the process, I present to you Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey, and he will walk you through the steps.
Yes, as the chief and mayor indicated, we believe that transparency builds trust through consistent and understood expectations. That's why we are taking these steps to explain this process to the public so that you understand what we are doing, why we are doing it, and you are able to hold us accountable to those standards. So if you turn your attention to the screen, we'll walk through each step in this process. So at the time of a critical incident, you will get a response from officers to the scene as well as the command staff. A member of the command staff will brief the media on the scene with the basic information. Remember, at that time, we do not have details or specific facts, and we want to make sure that we give specific information that gives the public enough information that they understand what has happened, any safety concerns, such as need to avoid the area, suspects to be on the lookout for, condition of officers and suspects if that's available. Understanding that we do not want to give out incorrect information. That information will be very preliminary in its nature, and we will direct everyone to our social media pages, particularly Twitter, as the primary source of information for any follow-up information that needs to be pushed out to the public that might be of a critical nature, such as avoid the area or be on the lookout. Next, over the course of the next 24 to 72 hours, we will provide the officer's name as well as where they work and their personnel information, such as their history as far as discipline, letters of commendation, and awards. If the subject involved is deceased, by law, the coroner is the only one that can release that information. We will not be able to release the information of a decedent that's involved in one of these situations. If the person is not deceased, we will have to make that determination based on the needs of the investigation. But we hope to provide that information in as timely a fashion as possible so that everyone understands who has been involved in this situation. To the body camera video, as the chief stated, our goal is to release body camera video within 10 business days of the situation. I will go into details in just a minute about how that will be done and why it's done in that fashion. And then lastly, the criminal and administrative investigations will continue. During that process, the Public Integrity Unit, which we commonly refer to as PIU, will investigate the shooting as a criminal incident. They are all investigated as criminal incidents, as well as the professional standards will then begin an investigation of the administrative process. As that continues and completes, we will turn over that file to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to make a final determination of charging or going to the grand jury. The Performance Review Board, which I'll go into detail on, will do an internal review of policy, practice, training, and supervision to make improvements to the situation. Okay. As far as the body-worn camera release goes, what will happen is we will release a curated version of the video. You all have seen this before. This will be a version that provides context as to the situation that happened. We want to make sure that the public understands what actually happened, such as the details of why the officer was there in the first place, how many officers were involved, the condition of officers and the suspect, so that the public has a clear understanding of the situation. We will also release the video in its raw version so that the public sees the incident in its entirety and understands the level of transparency that's built in there. In that raw video, the only thing that will be redacted is information that is of a sensitive nature. So we will block out things like social security numbers, dates of birth, witness information, that should not be released to the public, or things that are sensitive to the nature of the investigation, so as we do not compromise that investigation. There may be exceptions to this 10-day period. We foresee those would be few and far between, but some of those details might be that we have witnesses that their statements are critical to the investigation, that are not physically capable due to injuries or otherwise of giving that statement. Or we might have an issue where we have multiple body cameras that need to be redacted for personal information. And we will explain to the public anytime that we are going to deviate from this plan, why we are deviating from the plan, and exactly what our expectation going forward from that point is. The investigative process. So Public Integrity Unit, or PIU, will lead the criminal investigation. We are extremely thankful to the Kentucky State Police for their cooperation over the last several years in helping us with these investigations. At this time, we will be taking these investigations back over. We have investigators that have experience and training in the areas of officer-involved shootings, homicide investigations, and the quality of investigation that they conduct will be able to be verified through our transparency processes that will follow. When they are complete with the criminal side of the investigation, as we said, that file will get turned over in its entirety to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Any charging decision is not made by LMPD. Charging decisions to take cases to the grand jury, are the decision of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. In addition to that, we will turn it over to the Kentucky State Police in order to review that investigative file for its quality. A third file will go in accordance with our memorandum of understanding over to the Office of Inspector General for their processes that they will go through in that review. We believe that those 3 layers of additional scrutiny by outside entities will help follow through with the level of transparency and understanding by the public that we want to make sure that we see through these processes. The Professional Standards Unit investigation is completely separate, and I want the public to understand why they are 2 completely different types of investigations. The PIU investigation is a criminal investigation. Just as any other criminal investigation, there are certain constitutional protections that we have to afford anyone that's involved. So we cannot compel statements. We cannot force witnesses or involved parties to talk during that portion of the criminal investigation. During the professional standards investigation, that is an administrative investigation to ensure compliance with policy and training, that officers are performing and behaving to the standards that we would expect. During that investigation, we can force officers to provide statements. Nothing in the Professional Standards Unit investigation can be used in the public integrity investigation on the criminal side because of its nature of being a compelled statement. If it were to do so, it would taint that criminal investigation. So we have to make sure that those 2 investigations are bifurcated and kept separate. As far as how the officer is dealt with during a critical incident, the officer is immediately placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. They will have interaction with our unit called peer support that will make sure that they have the social and emotional supports that they need. At any time during this incident or investigation, the chief has the sole authority to apply discipline related to the incident to the officer. She has the discretion immediately to take action or to take action at the end of the entire investigation. Prior to returning to duty, once that determination is made by the chief and the executive staff and everything is cleared, the officer will have to go through a psychological screening to make sure that they haven't suffered any negative effects of trauma that would prevent them from being able to return to duty. They will be ordered to go through any supplemental training that we have determined prior to their return to duty. After the investigation is concluded, the Performance Review Board within LMPD, which is newly created, will look at this incident from a performance standard. So you have a review of the criminal act of the officer-involved shooting. You have an administrative review through the professional standards investigation of compliance with policy, and now we have a performance review. During that time period, there are subject matter experts from different areas of the agency that will review the incident to say, if the officer performed really well, why did the officer perform well? Was it because our policy, our training, our supervision has guided that officer to perform in that way? And if not, what do we need to change to make sure that all officers will perform to that same high standard? And if there are gaps in policy, training, and supervision that need to be dealt with at the agency level, what steps do we need to take to make sure that those gaps are filled? And so after that performance review board, the officer will be given whatever training that has been determined. The chief will make the determination of the return to duty. At the end of all of this investigation, after the officer's return to duty, understanding that both that criminal and administrative process can be very lengthy, we will make sure that on our website, every step of this investigative process is published for you to see. So you will see when our officer-involved shooting video body camera is released, it will be published there. When the case is turned over to the Commonwealth, it will be published there that we have turned the case over. And then when there's a final disposition from the Commonwealth and from professional standards, and the chief has made that final disposition, that will also be published there. So by doing this step-by-step process of conducting the investigation to a very high standard, and then setting up processes of transparency, we feel that you, the public, will understand how this process occurred from its beginning to its end, and will understand why the decisions were made the way they were. And we'll turn it over for questions.
I also too want to add in to here that we will be providing the media every 30 days an update. You'll be receiving that so the community will know exactly where that investigation stands. So we're opening it up for questions. I'm going to ask my team to come join me.
Just a quick process question. Is the investigation going to be turned over to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office before or after the Inspector General review?
It's going to be turned over simultaneously. So all three parties will get that file. So the Commonwealth Attorney's Office will receive it, KSP will receive it, and of course, the Inspector General will receive the file.
So if there are any issues with the investigation, like if KSP has questions about one particular piece of the incident, would they then have direct communication with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office?
That is correct.
Chief, I wanted to ask if the Office of the Inspector General sees something that doesn't add up or that isn't right, what can they then do if it stops at them?
Okay, so Mr. Ed Harness, I called him earlier today. Is he in here? I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go, Mr. Harness. Come on up here with us, sir. Come on up here and join us. So I called him earlier today, and so within our memorandum of understanding that he will be able to actually review the file. So simultaneously, all parties will review it. If he sees something, whatever his process is within his office, they will follow that accordingly.
And
Yes, sir.
what does he have the power to do if that were
The same power that he has right now. And so I'll make sure you get that memorandum of understanding as well. So to say he can make recommendations to me on that file, and at that time I'll receive those recommendations. But again, I still have the final authority to issue any discipline necessary. Thank you, Mr. Harns, for joining us.
Chief, what about the officer himself or herself? So, if something happened and it was, I don't know how you describe it, as a bad shooting, and the officer winds up in court or facing charges, him or herself, then the evidence is already out there within 10 days. How would that affect that whole process on the officer's end and with the union, I guess?
Again, it goes back to if there is a bad shooting, I can render immediate discipline immediately. So I will make that determination whether or not that person needs to be terminated immediately, or are we going to continue to follow through with the investigation. But if we see that this person is in criminal court from that and the Commonwealth Attorney has made that determination, you can, pretty much come to that conclusion.
But I meant more on the officer's side, defending himself against maybe criminal charges for a shooting that he's involved in, the officer.
They still have their rights with FOP, right? Within their own attorney, so it still works the same.
Okay, yeah, how does that work?
So the criminal process will occur just like it would for anyone else that has video out there, right? So the court process will go through, but that is a concern for us. That's why we want to make sure that when we release this body camera video, the timing of it is the 10 business days, so that we can make sure that we get statements in that investigation prior to the review of the body camera. We want to make sure that when an officer or any critical witness gives a statement as to fact, it's the fact as they recall it, not trying to articulate what they saw in a video. That's why we need that critical time period to be able to interview critical witnesses to any of these situations. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chief, what is your response to members of the community who may have concerns with Lmpd being the forefront of these investigations as opposed to someone like KSP?
Well, I will submit to you that now we have additional layers. Before, we didn't have the Officer Inspector General. So now we have Mr. Harness that's in play. Again, KSP is not going anywhere, and they're going to actually review the file. And again, the Commonwealth Attorney is going to have it. And so, again, I'm very confident as to the work that we do as an agency, and we service other surrounding agencies, 22 of them to be exact. So again, we have that experience and we know exactly how to conduct this investigation properly. But again, we have those other layers so the community will feel comfortable in us moving forward.
Chief, last week you talked about a number of different administrative actions that you've taken since you became interim chief. I think it included 7 firings, 4 that were in the process, a number of other discipline that was handed out. Will the publishing of the criminal and administrative reviews on Lmpd's website apply to some of those that have already happened in the last 2 or 3 months?
We're working towards that to make sure that our website and dashboards are actually, I want to use this term today, community friendly. So then when you're looking at it, you know exactly what you're looking at and that it makes sense. So yes, we're moving forward. We're in that process of building that out so you can have all the information there at your disposal. All right? Go ahead. Sorry.
Just one other quick follow-up to your comment, and then the chief is going to actually, or I don't know if it's Deputy Chief Humphrey, is going to release show the video from the incident that occurred 2 weeks ago on Frankfurt Avenue. One of the other main drivers with respect to the policies that we're announcing today, the practice that Deputy Chief Humphrey went through is, as the chief said in her opening remarks, the way we are able to ensure that the body cam footage is released within 10 business days is if Lmpd has the leading role in the investigation. And so in this day and time, all of us up here and everyone in our administration thinks transparency to the public is critically important. And so we wanted to make sure we were able to achieve that for the public and for the transparency, and that was one of the big drivers that led us towards this decision. So now the chief, or Deputy Chief Humphrey, is going to release the body cam footage from the last officer-involved shooting that occurred on Frankfurt Avenue, I believe 2 Thursdays ago today.
Mayor, I just have one more follow-up about the 10 days specifically. The prior policy before KSP got involved was 24 hours. Were there issues with that policy that were identified as to why there's not a return to that policy, or maybe a 72-hour policy instead? Why 10 business days?
Well, for several reasons. First, now all officers are wearing body-worn cameras. Second, we are going to be consistent with this policy, and I think that's very important. If you have a practice, it's important to be consistent and to follow that, and so we will. And then also, as was talked about earlier, we are looking to, we understand the need for transparency. That is a primary goal here. At the same time, we want a fair and thorough investigation so that it is appropriate and it is fair. And so that gives us the time to at least have the opportunity to interview not just the officer who may have been directly involved, but also, as you'll see in this case, there were many officers that were on the scene, and we want to be able to give PIU the opportunity to interview everyone who was at the scene of one of these incidents.
Mayor, I wanted to ask,
Yeah,
when you
last question.
talked in your first month, you had voiced frustrations with how long some of these videos took in the previous administration to come out. When did you know that this was something you wanted to implement?
Well, I think right away in those conversations, I wanted to get body cam footage out as quick as possible. Regardless of what occurred, I think it's very important that the public have the ability to see what happened. In this day and age, that is critically important. And I think everyone, all of the executive team of Lmpd agrees that transparency is important. And so to me, this is a very positive step forward, that within 10 business days of a significant incident like an officer-involved shooting, as you'll see here today, we are releasing the body cam footage. This is a new approach, and I would venture to guess not many other cities in the country are this committed to committing to a time frame to release body cam footage of significant incidents like this. So that's a perfect segue to show you the body cam footage from the last officer-involved shooting that happened 10 business days ago.
Okay, so this incident is from August 3rd at around 10 p.m. in the 2000 block of New Main Street. It involves Officer Roberto Cedeno, who is a 4th Division late watch officer who was hired in September of 2020 and sworn in April of 2021. He has 4 letters of commendation and no record of discipline in his personnel file. I want to remind you as we watch this video, we are watching an incident where someone lost their life. We're also watching an incident that was very traumatic for the officers involved as well.
On August 3rd, 2023, around 10 p.m., LMPD's 5th Division officers received a call from a community member to respond to the 2000 block of New Main Street on a report of gunshots being fired in the neighborhood. Preliminary information reveals that a resident heard a loud pop outside. Initially, the resident was unsure if the sound was a gunshot. When the resident went outside to investigate, he saw a backpack and a laptop under his truck directly in front of his house. He then heard additional gunfire. When officers arrived on scene, they spoke to the resident and began their investigation. At approximately 10:19 p.m., officers advised they heard shots being fired towards their direction. One officer advised that he may have been struck and felt something hit his leg. Roughly 10 minutes later, the individual fired shots near the officers on New Main Street. Additional officers on the Frankfurt side of the incident began responding to the gunfire. A short time later, a subject was located in an alley and pointed a handgun at Officer Cedeno. Officer Cedeno discharged his weapon, striking the subject. A loaded firearm was found in the individual's right hand. The subject was also in possession of an additional magazine loaded with ammunition. What you are about to view is body-worn camera footage from the officers who responded to the incident. In accordance with LMPD procedure, the officer was placed on administrative leave. The LMPD Public Integrity Unit is the lead on the investigation. A copy of the case file will be turned over to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for determination of final disposition. A copy will also be provided to Kentucky State Police for a thorough investigative review, and a copy will also be provided to the Louisville Office of Inspector General in compliance with our existing Memorandum of Understanding.
911 operator Poet, where's your emergency?
In your name, there's been some shots fired over here.
Do you see anyone who's been shot?
No.
How many shots did you hear?
I heard 3, that was about 10 minutes ago, and now I just heard another one.
Hey man, what's going on? Okay.
Look, I'm in my house. I hear what sounds like 3 shots. Right?
Okay.
I had a car on battery charger out back. I thought, fuck, the battery probably blew up. You know, that's the first thing that went through my mind. Sound like gunshots. So I go around, and I go back there, and it's found. I pick up the charger. Well, I stopped in. My sister lives right here. I stopped in to see her. And when I come out, as I was walking down this sidewalk, it's been like 20 minutes, right? I heard somebody over say something about putting a gun away, put your gun down, and I heard another shot. It's on the other side of the tracks.
Metro. Shots fired. New Main Street. He's in the wood line. I might be hit. Hold what you got. It came from that wood line there. I felt something hit my leg. Just heard another round. Boys, head right in front here. Shot fire. All right, we need a man back. Go get a man back. All right, we need a man back. Go get a man back.
EMS code 3, suspect down. 2036, 2036 number, suspect down on Officer K.
Hey, you hear me?
Suspect.
Hey.
We got shot in the neck.
They got EMS right there. Somebody got
Yeah, it's right here behind me.
All right, turn to evidence for the jump in for evidence.
Neck shot.
And I'm suspect down.
Somebody got a med bag coming?
EMS is right here.
Okay, perfect.
And that bag up there. This is not a suspect. This is here. Suspect is dead.
So what you've seen is what will be typical of the curated section of an officer-involved shooting video, where we've given an explanation of the circumstances as well as slowed the video down. We've paused it so that you could see how the person was positioned with the gun in their hand, as well as later highlighting the gun that was next to the subject after the incident. The entire raw version of this video of both officers, Officer Reinhardt as well as Officer Cedeno, will be posted to our YouTube page so it can be viewed in its entirety, with the only redactions being for protection of sensitive information. Thank you.